We are given a graphic of a parabola, and we are given the focus of the parabola, and we are given the directrix of the parabola. And one of the key elements that we're going to use today is the fact that we could pick a point on the parabola, say P1 here, and the distance from P1 to the focus is exactly the same as the distance from that point down to the directrix. We're going to use that relationship to help us find the equation of the parabola given a specific focus, in this case 5, -6, and a specific directrix y equals 12. So we're going to use that relationship. PD is equal to PF. The distance from the point to the directrix and the point to the focus. And we're going to derive this formula or this equation from the distance formula. So we're going to use the square root of x minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y minus y sub 1 quantity squared is equal to the square root of x minus x sub 2 quantity squared plus y minus y sub 2 quantity squared. So we're going to use that distance formula and that relationship to help us derive this particular equation. Now, we're going to let this 5 be my x sub 1 and this -6 be my y sub 1 on my point. We're going to let the 12 be my y sub 2, but we don't really have an x value for that, so we're going to say that x sub 2 is going to be equal to x. Now we're going to use substitution and substitute those values into my distance formula. So I'm going to have the square root of x minus 5 squared plus y minus my y sub 1, which we said was -6, and that quantity is squared, and that's equal to the square root of x minus, and we said my x sub 2 was equal to x because we didn't really have a value, and that quantity is squared, plus y minus my y sub 2 is going to be the equation of my directrix, which is y is equal to 12, so it's going to be y minus 12 quantity squared. Now, once we have that substituted in, we're going to simplify. So we have the square root of x minus 5 squared plus y, and notice I have a minus minus here. That makes it y plus 6 quantity squared is equal to, now notice I have x minus x there. That's going to zero out. So I'm going to drop that out of the equation. I'm going to be left with y minus 12 quantity squared. All right, now that I have this, the next step is I want to get rid of the square root. So I'll get rid of the square root by taking both sides and squaring it. So when I do that, the square eliminates the square root, and I'm left with x minus 5 quantity squared plus y plus 6 quantity squared is equal to y minus 12 quantity squared. Now notice, on both sides, I have a y term. So I want to expand both of those, and I'm going to leave this one the way that it is. So when I expand y plus 6 quantity squared, I can do that either by folding it or by doing a window. Let's just come down here and do kind of a quick window on that. And the window method is much like a Punnett square in science. I use y and 6 and y and 6. And when I multiply these out, y times y gives me y squared. Y times 6 gives me 6y. 6 times y gives me 6y. And then 6 times 6 gives me 36. Now I'll pull that out and simplify or combine like terms. So I have y squared. Now notice on the diagonal, I have y plus, or y, 6y plus 6y gives me plus 12y. and then I have plus 36. Okay, I want to do the same thing with this portion of it. So I'm also going to window that as well. So I have y and minus 12, and then y and minus 12. Y times y gives me y squared. Y times a negative 12 gives me a negative 12y. Negative 12 times y gives me a negative 12y. And a negative 12 times a negative 12 is a positive 144. Again, I combine the like terms. So notice in the middle here, I have minus 12y to minus 12y. I have the y squared first. Minus 12y gives me a negative 24y plus 144. Now let's take these pieces and put them back into our equation where they go, here and here, and then see what we have left. So if we bring that back together, we're going to have x minus 5 quantity squared. Remember, we don't do anything with it right now. And I've got plus y squared plus 12y plus 36 equals y squared minus 24y plus 144. All right, now it's a matter of simplifying once again. So notice I have a y squared on this side and a y squared on this side. If I subtract out y squared on both sides, it cancels out. So those are gone. So I'm left with x minus 5 quantity squared plus 12y plus 36 is equal to negative 24y plus 144. Now my goal is to get all my y values on the same side and simplify. So to do that, I subtract 12y from both sides. So that's going to give, and I'm going to go ahead and subtract off the 36 from both sides. So when I do that, I'm going to have left on this side, I'm just going to have x minus 5 squared is equal to, and notice the 12y when I subtract it off zeroes out, and the 36 when I subtract it off zeroes out. On this side I have negative 24y minus 12y gives me a negative 36y. And then 144 minus 36, let's see, that's going to give us, we know it's going to be positive. That's going to give me a positive 108. At this point, notice we have x minus 5 quantity squared is equal to a negative 36y plus 108. And negative 36 and 108 have a common factor. The common factor is 36. So I'm going to leave this side, x minus 5 quantity squared. I'm going to leave it the way it is. That's going to be equal to, and what I want to do now is I want to factor out a negative 36 out of this term and this term. So when I do that, that gives me a negative 36. I'm going to put it in parentheses. I have y. And notice when I factor out a negative over here, I have to change this sign to negative. So that makes it a negative 3. Okay? All right, so now I want to get rid of the negative 36 because the goal is to solve this for y. So one of the ways I could do this, I can either divide by negative 36 or I can multiply both sides by the reciprocal of negative 36. And that's the option I'm going to do here. So I'm going to multiply this thing by a negative 1 over 36 on this side. And I'm going to multiply it by a negative 1 over 36 on this side. And when I do that, I'm left with a negative 1 over 36 times x minus 5 quantity squared. That's equal to, when I multiply the negative 36 times its reciprocal, it cancels it out. And I'm left with, and I'm going to drop the parenthesis, y minus 3. Now remember, my goal is I want to solve this for y. So I want to get rid of the minus 3. So to get rid of the minus 3, I add 3 to both sides. So it's going to give me a negative 1 over 36 times x minus 5 squared plus 3, and that's equal to y. When I add y over here, it zeroes it out. This puts this equation in what's called vertex form. So I could actually easily find the vertex now. Remember, this is h, and that is k, and the vertex is at hk. So, and remember, when I pull this one out, I have to change the sign, so the vertex is going to be at 5, 3. And remember, our goal of the problem was to derive the equation, which this is, given the focus and the directrix that we had.